So Indiana lost. Well, I thought that would happen. Thought they'd hang around, but not completely and utterly shocked that Ohio State ends up winning the game 38-15. So Curt Cignetti's team, on the one hand, was exposed. On the other hand, is right in line with what the college football intelligentsia have been saying for a long time. Recruiting matters. That's what that game was. Indiana had an entire quarter. That offense that has been throwing it all over the field against everybody they've played, and they've beaten them so badly, they put up 15 points. They had a quarter where they didn't gain a single yard. Yeah, that's what happens. That's what can happen. That game was Ohio State realizing its full potential. Because when a team that has more talent and more NFL players on both sides of the ball plays to its potential against a team that doesn't, that's what it looks like. And guess what? If you play that game out 10 times, Indiana is going to win one, maybe two of them. They're not going to win zero. But that's contingent upon Ohio State not playing its best football game. Indiana and BYU, very similar. Miami, sort of. I'm going to talk about Miami more later on today's show because that's not exactly the same thing. Indiana and BYU are the examples here. When you have these teams that don't have a bunch of blue chip prospects or don't have a bunch of NFL talent all over the field and they're punching above their weight, so to speak, on paper, sometimes you can have a team like TCU that just keeps punching above their weight. They just keep finding ways to win. It's why you play the games on the field. The downside to that is what can happen here, or what happened to TCU in the national championship game. When you do come upon a roster that's more talented, if they don't make mistakes, then they are going to beat you, and they're going to do so soundly. Ohio State reminded everybody that they can win the national championship. Ohio State reminded everybody that Will Howard's a really good quarterback, throws an early interception, doesn't seem to faze him. That guy can be really, really accurate. I said going into this game, I thought Indiana had the better quarterback. Heck, I still might feel that way. But he does not have the better team around him. That answer lies with Will Howard. Curtis Rourke was under pressure in this game. Will Howard, not so much. Will Howard's got NFL wide receivers. Curtis Rourke doesn't. They could not consistently separate from the Ohio State defensive backs, who I think played their best game of the year. Jim Knowles, defense coordinator for the Ohio State Buckeyes, give him the game ball. Give him the game ball. He absolutely deserves it. And for all you people that go on and on for reasons I can't quite figure out, but it happens anyway, about Ryan Day not being able to win big games, what does this classify as? What is it? Well, they were a big favorite. They should have done this, that. If they had lost the football game, you would have been going on about, well, Indiana was just underrated. Indiana this. Like those sorts of conversations, frankly, they tire me out pretty quickly. Ryan Day's a really good football coach. This was a really good performance. This was two-way, complete and utter dominance by Ohio State. Completely. They were in control from the moment the game kicked off after the first possession each way. Indiana gets a stop. Indiana gets a score. Ohio State dominated the game the rest of the way. Michigan's coming into the shoe next week. Good luck. Because Ohio State's got one thing on their mind. We want a rematch with Oregon, win the Big Ten, get a bye, play for national championship. They look like a national championship contender out there. Indiana, on the other hand, is going to play Purdue next week, who stinks, and they are going to beat them into oblivion. Because when you get beat like this for the first time, I imagine Curt Cignetti is going to find the way to motivate his team to get him to play Purdue at a level that is worried about Indiana and not worried about Purdue. So I imagine they'll go out and win big, and I pray the committee doesn't fall into the trap. They might not be allowed to fall into the trap of putting in a 10-2 SEC team over Indiana. You know why? Because Indiana is going to end the season 11-1, but Ole Miss is 9-3. And Texas A&M, by the time I'm done uploading the show, could very well have a third loss. And you're not putting those teams in. So I think Indiana will be just fine. They should be just fine. And when they win next week, they should be a college football playoff team. But they showed what their ceiling is. They showed that if a team that has more talent across the board plays the way they're capable, they're not going to be able to keep up. And that's okay. What do you think Indiana's recruiting classes can do after this season? What do you think Curt Cignetti has done on the trail? What do you think he's going to be able to do on the trail after he just put up the first ever 10-win season in Bloomington and signed a contract extension? I imagine he's going to go out and hit the portal. I imagine he'll go out and hit the recruiting trail as well. Indiana didn't have talent across the board. That's okay. Doesn't mean in the 12-team playoff they shouldn't be allowed to get in. They certainly will have a good opportunity to do so. So too will Arizona State, who controls their own destiny to win the Big 12 and go to, I mean, you talk about unexpected teams. Indiana, Arizona State, both had preseason win totals of 4.5. Kenny Dillingham should be the coach of the year in the Big 12. He just beat a guy who was in the running, Kalani Sitake and BYU. Deion Sanders just lost again. And we'll see what happens with the Buffs. A lot of season could still play out. But if I had to vote right now, Kenny Dillingham's the coach of the year in the Big 12. This shouldn't have been able to be turned around this quickly. Back to their Pac-12 days, RIP, Arizona State has long been described as a sleeping giant. This is what it's supposed to look and feel like, where the students get onto the field too early because they're too overzealous, waiting for this breakthrough moment, and Kenny Dillingham just delivered it. This was the biggest game in a long time in Tempe, and Kenny Dillingham's team came out. I know they won by 5. You watched that football game. I watched that football game, most of it anyway. Arizona State's a better football team. Yep, BYU came back. Yep, BYU had a Hail Mary at the end. It was all wild and crazy. They get down to the 1 yard. I mean, it was almost the most BYU victory imaginable. But it turns out that style of football is not sustainable to win a conference championship. But in the Big 12, it could be. It still could be for BYU. The season is not, this is not an outright lose feeling for me. This is lean lose for BYU because they're still in it, just like Colorado. It stinks to lose, but your primary goal, winning the conference and getting into the playoff, it's still available to you. But it's available to Arizona State as well. This is not a fluky football team. This is not a team that is scraping by. This is just a good, well-coordinated, they locked up their coordinators with extensions before this game. This is just a really good, well-coached football team that plays tough, hard-nosed, gritty football. And the duel in the desert next week is going to be the opportunity for Arizona State to have their season spoiled by Arizona. It was supposed to be the other way around in some people's view, but it's flipped. It is completely flipped, and Arizona State, this is not a run where you watch a football team and go, they're just scraping by, they're bound to lose. No, they're going toe-to-toe with Big 12 title contenders, and they're building 3-possession leads. They have done that in consecutive weeks. They did it on the road. They did it here at home. One of their 2 Big 12 losses came when Jeff Sims had to start at quarterback. When Sam Levitt's been there, they've lost 1 time. They've lost 1 time. On the road against Texas Tech. I tell you what, Kenny Dillingham is just, that guy's a heck of a football coach. Heck of a football coach. 9-2 are the Sun Devils. 9. Can you believe that? I picked Arizona State as an over win total team this year. I didn't see this coming. This is the story of my preseason predictions on the Big 12. I'm right or wrong, but I wasn't right enough or I wasn't wrong enough. Colorado is going to be good, but not great. Well, they might be kind of great by Big 12 standards. Arizona State, they're not finishing last. They could finish first. Pick to finish last, and Arizona State has a path to finish first in the Big 12 and make the college football playoff. And it's absolutely deserved. It's absolutely deserved. BYU going into this game, remember, was ranked, wait for it, number 14 in the country. So Arizona State's about to become a top 15 team with a conference championship game berth likely still looming. I mean, this is just a monumental win. This was the sort of season, this was the sort of game and stretch run that Arizona State was supposed to be able to have in the view of people like myself in year 3, not in year 2. Back-to-back 3-9 seasons, and boom, he's gotten it right quickly. Never underestimate the ability to turn things around quickly in college football nowadays. Curt Cignetti at Indiana, Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State, they have completely flipped it around. Heck, Deion Sanders at Colorado, it's taken till year 2. But boy, what a battle it was. And Arizona State got a big rivalry game next week.